the Music Theory Lady. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Music Theory Lady. Today we're talking about counting 16th rhythms. So before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple other meters we didn't get to talk about in our meters video, and that is common time and cut time. Common time is a C at the very beginning of the staff, and it's the exact same time signature as 4/4. Cut time looks very similar, except it has a vertical line going through the C, and it is a 2/2 time signature. So it's usually a little bit faster. I typically tell my students we don't very often get tempo ideas or indications from time signatures, except for cut time. Usually composers use cut time when they want things to move a little bit quicker. So a little bit of eighth note math that we need to know before we get too far into counting. You need to know that 2 eighth notes is equal to 1 quarter note. You need to know that 2 16th notes is equal to 1 eighth note. You need to know that 4 16th notes is equal to 1 quarter note. And you need to know that 3 16th notes can fit into a dotted eighth note. All right, so first of all, notice any notes shorter than a quarter note can be beamed together if they belong to the same beat. So remember, we've been talking about beaming. I had a few students point out that they didn't know how to beam these notes correctly in terms of can eighth notes and 16th notes be beamed together, and how does that work when the eighth note has 1 beam and the 16th note has 2 beams? Great questions. So I wanted to go over the fact that as long as notes that are shorter than a quarter note are in the same beat, they can all be beamed together. You just really have to make sure you have the correct number of beams attached to the stem of the note. So for instance, if you have an eighth note, you need to have 1 beam attached to the stem. If you have a 16th note, you need to have 2 beams attached to that stem. So as you can see down here, we've got a dotted eighth note, which would have 1 beam, and a 16th note, which would have 2 beams. So we have this little extra tail of a 16th beam there attached to that stem so that you know that there's 2 beams touching it. But notice that 16th stem doesn't continue on to the eighth note stem because we don't want two beams touching that stem. Then we have an eighth note with 2 16th notes, and then there's even a 16th with an eighth and a 16th. So you can see there's 2 little 16th beams coming out from the sides of each of those side 16th notes, but those little beams are not touching that eighth note stem, which should only have 1 beam. So now we're going to be counting some 16th notes in common time. So right here I just have 4 full beats of 16th notes, and there's a couple of different ways that you can count them. I have students typically in 2 camps. One is the E-anda crowd, so 1 E-anda, 2 E-anda, 3 E-anda, 4 E-anda. Or I have kids in the T-teta group, 1 T-teta, 2 T-teta, 3 T-teta, 4 T-teta. Notice that the downbeat is always a number, and the upbeat, or the second half of the beat, will always start with te or and. So if it was just eighth notes, it would be 1 and 2 and, or 1 te, 2 te. But because we have those little bitty 16th notes in between, it's 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, or 1 T-teta, 2 T-teta, 3 T-teta, 4 T-teta. So that's kind of where all the 16th notes land. And now we're going to look at if we combine some of these 16th notes into eighth notes, depending upon where they are in the beat, what would you call that in numbers? So first we're going to look at an eighth note and 2 16ths. So since that eighth note has 2 16ths in it, it has the 1 and the E of the 1 E-anda inside of it, and then we're left with the 2 16ths of anda. So remember, we're thinking 4 16ths and a quarter. 2 of those 16ths right now are in that eighth note, 1 E, and then we're left with the other 2 16th notes and So that's why this would be 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 and a, or 1 teta, 2 teta, 3 teta, 4 teta. And the next one, we have a dotted eighth note, which remember has 3 16ths in it. That means it has the 1, the E, the and all in that dotted eighth note, and then we're left with the of the 16th note. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I usually have my students sort of subdivide it. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're aware of where that 1 E and lie within that space that you're just holding that note forever. So you're not just going 1, 2, and trying to figure out where the goes. If you can subdivide it as you go 1, 2, 3, 4, you can find where that goes a little bit better. And then the same thing with tas 1, ta, 2, ta, 3, ta, 4, ta. Or I'll have my students just bump the and or the te. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it helps them to put that in the right spot. Okay, this one we have the 16th at the beginning and then the dotted 8th at the end. So again, we start with that 16th note and then those other 3 16th notes are joined together in that dotted 8th note. So that would be 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E. And you're thinking of that and. So it's 1 E, E, 2 E, E, 3 E, E, 4 E, E, like that. Or you can do it in T's, 1 T, 2 T, 3 T, 4 T. Okay, then we get to a 16th and an 8th and a 16th. And because that 8th in the center, remember, is 2 16ths, that means it has, in the eanda system, it has the E and the and inside, so we're left with the So it's 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E. Again, when you're counting 16ths, it's really important that you know exactly where every 16th is falling while you're counting. Here it is in T-tetas. 1 T, ta, 2 T, ta, 3 T, ta, 4 T, ta. And this one is the one that confuses my students the most. So I didn't put the counts up here just yet because it has 2 16ths. Obviously, those 16ths are going to be the number and the E, or the number and the T. And then the question is, what is that last 8th note going to be called? I have students who say te or and I have students who say ta or and the answer is, it's the te or and, because if you're thinking about 1 T, te, ta, that te is landing where that 8th note is, and then it's holding through that last 16th of ta. So this would be 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and, or 1 T, te, 2 T, te, 3 T, te, 4 T, te. Okay, so now we're going to practice some counting. There's a little thing in here I wanted to point out really quickly. It's a term that they use on the AP exam that throws my students for a loop every year, so I want to make sure you know exactly what this term means. Right here at the start, you can see there's a quarter note in that measure, but it's a 4/4 measure, so shouldn't we have 4 beats in the measure? Yes, and yet here we only have 1 beat. This is what we call an anacrusis. Notice I've got that bold and in italics down there. It's an anacrusis. Some people call it an incomplete measure. You maybe in your ensemble have learned it to be called as a pickup measure, and that's great. But for some reason on the AP exam, they go with the really staunch name of anacrusis. So you want to make sure you know anacrusis is just an incomplete measure or a pickup measure at the very start of a piece. A couple things I want you to know about that is the rest of the beats from that measure are typically in the very last measure. So if you see here, you've got this 1 beat, and then if you look at the very last measure, we have the other beats of that measure to make 1 complete measure between the 2 of them. The other thing you should know is that when you're numbering your measures, we haven't talked about this, but usually when you're trying to reference something in your music, you're referencing what measure you're on. So for instance, this would be measure 1, this is measure 2, this is measure 3, and this is measure 4. If you have an incomplete measure or an anacrusis, we don't typically give that a number. You typically start with the first complete measure. So you would skip this note in terms of numbering those measures and call this measure 1. All right, so let's count it. So if this is an anacrusis, we're going to start that on beat 4, because remember those other 3 beats, the first 3 beats are here at that end of that measure. So we're going to start this on beat 4. I'll give you 3 beats and then we're going to count this together. Watch out for those 16ths and watch out for those rests. Here goes 1, 2, and 3. 4, 1, 4 E and a 1, rest, rest. 4 and a 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 off. Okay, did you get it? Here's another one. This one's in 2/4. Again, notice we have an anacrusis. It's starting on the very last eighth note of a 2/4 bar, which means we're going to start it on and or te, whichever system you feel more comfortable with. Then we'll start with a 1, and it's tied, so we're not going to say 2. We're going to say E and that's left over. Then we have 1, an eighth rest on the start of beat 2, so we're going to say and for that last part of beat 2. Here's 1 that's tied to the first part of beat 2, E and then 1 and 2 and 1, and then rest. So here goes 1 and 2 and 1, E and 1 and 1, E and 1 and 2 and 1 off. Next one's in 4/4. Again, an anacrusis. This time it starts on the of 4E and So we're going to start it on You then have 4/16, 2/8. That should be easy. This is beat 3 and 4. You're thinking 4E and so you know where to put that Next one, notice these 16ths are flipped. So it's not 1 and it's 1E and. Rest on the first half of beat 2, so we're left with the and of 2. 3, which is tied to the first part of 4, so we don't say 4. And another dotted eighth where you're thinking 1 so you know where to put it. 2E and 3 and rest. Here goes. I'll give you 4 3/4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4 E and 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 E and 3 and 1, 2 E and 3 off. All right, here comes. Challenge. This is a big one. Pause it right here so that you can figure out before we count together. Got it? Here it goes. I'm going to give you 3 beats and that first part of beat 4, and then we'll start on E and together. 1, 2, 3, 4. E and 1, E and 3, 4, 1. E and 4 and 1 and 3 and 1 E and 2 E and 3, 4 E and 1, 3 and E and 3, E and 1 E and E and 1, 4 and 1 and 3 E and 1 E. Did you make it? If not, feel free to go back and give it a try again. That's it for our 16th note counting. Hopefully that helped you. If not, let me know down in the comments and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.